We're going to begin the last session of the day here. We've got a great panel here on to discuss policy implications. Hope you all have enjoyed the sessions beforehand. My name is Paul Chesser. I'm Executive Director of the American Tradition Institute. We're a pretty new think tank, started up last year in earnest with some ambitious projects. I'm formerly with the Heartland Institute and did a project before that called Climate Strategies Watch. Working here with Chris Horner here in the center on some projects. We are suing, last week we sued NASA to get the outside employment records of Dr. James Hansen, and a couple weeks ago we sued the University of Virginia to get the records that Ken Cuccinelli, the Attorney General of Virginia, cannot get. We're trying to get them through the Freedom of Information Act, and we had a judge rule in our favor that we can, Chris and our colleague David Schneier can actually look at those records, and then we'll probably have another court fight over what they're trying to hold back in the fall sometime. That's enough of the commercial for American Tradition Institute. You can check out our work at atinstitute.org. I don't have bios. Do I need bios? Sorry. I need bios and I need glasses. I am going to introduce all three speakers, and they can just come up in order, and you'll just have to remember who each one is. Alan Carlin, PhD. Dr. Alan Carlin recently retired after more than 38 years as a senior analyst and manager at the Environmental Protection Agency. In March 2009, he authored a highly critical internal review of EPA's draft report on endangerment from greenhouse gases, which led him to become a whistleblower. Okay, the H is Chris Horner. Christopher Horner is a senior fellow with the Center for Energy and Environment at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. He's also an attorney in Washington, D.C., and has written 3 best-selling books. It says there's only 2 here. He wrote Red Hot Lies, How Global Warming Alarmists Use Threats, Fraud, and Deception to Keep You Misinformed. And the first book was Politically Incorrect Guide to Global Warming, and his most recent book is Power Grab. And we also have here Mark Morano. He's executive editor and chief correspondent for climatedepot.com, and that's a website you should visit at least once a day, if not more. He's the climate drudge. A global warming and eco news center founded in 2009. Mark served for 3 years as a senior advisor, speechwriter, and climate researcher for the U.S. Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, working for Senator Jim Inhofe. So we'll begin the session now with Dr. Alan Carlin.
Thank you. Yeah, good. I wanted to simplify things, but maybe made it more complicated by using a number of acronyms, which most of us probably know, but you may not. I'll give you a second to read through them. It turns out that my focus over the last 2.5 years has been remarkably close to the theme of this conference. My comments on the 2009 draft Endangerment Finding report, which the chairman just mentioned, tried to emphasize the extent to which the scientific method had or had not been used in what EPA was saying. And more recently, in April, I published a paper which asks whether the economic benefits of controlling CO2 would be if you used the scientific method and excluded major effects. The bottom line is that my results are quite a bit different from most other people who have worked on this, including the speaker this morning. He thinks that the world should do something about global warming, and I don't. But my assignment today is not to talk about the economics or the scientific method, but to talk about the current realities of the climate change issue. I really think this is a very important issue because it involves human freedom, economic progress, and even the future of science itself. It is my view that we need to slow down or stop the Obama GWD Agenda, which I defined a couple slides back, and try to make it less likely that such scientifically environmental scares can be used in the future. In my opinion, global cooling is more likely than global warming, and we really need to start worrying about that. In thinking about what it is that we might be able to do or should be able to do in an ideal world, I have a general philosophy, but it depends on which particular item in the Obama agenda you're worrying about, how much it applies. In general, my view is that the public will often side with approaches that claim they will avoid environmental risks, even ones that haven't been proven or maybe completely invalid, even ones that might adversely impact them economically. For example, winning the argument that that added control of mercury from power plants is really an important issue is something that we may not be able to pull off. But on the other hand, Congress needs to control the expenditures. I think we can all agree on that. And if fiscal problems are to be solved, I don't see why government agencies that try to work on such things should be exempt. So an interesting approach may be to fight for changes in procedures or budget controls that solve both immediate and longer-term problems. I think I may have left out some, but I count 9 different things that the Obama administration has tried or is planning to try or but I may have missed one or more. These range from cap and trade at the top to number 9 at the bottom, which is that they're actually making a serious effort to try to indoctrinate the public with their global warming doctrine. Here are some countermeasures that might be used for each of these 9. The first, cap and trade, is hopefully dead, but who knows? And I will go through each of these in turn. My view is that RPSs are a bad idea, as are wind and solar subsidies, which are very similar. They're the first of 3 fallbacks, which they have built from cap and trade. RPSs amount to a tax on users' utility bills to subsidize uneconomic, undependable sources. This approach is even more non-economic due to the shale gas revolution. The costs and in practicality need to be made ultra clear, and the RPSs and subsidies need to come to an end, in my opinion. Moving on to numbers 3 and 4, which deal with EPA. In my opinion, EPA has become a sort of monster which endangers the use of fossil fuel energy, the economy, jobs, rule of law, and scientific integrity. It didn't used to be that way, and I'm very sorry that I have to report that that's what's happened, in my view. In fact, it's gotten to the point that I don't know why we have an EPA. Why doesn't EPA just farm out everything to the environmental organizations? I think that would save a lot of time and effort and money. EPA has been given a very broad mandate on the assumption that it would be used with care. But it keeps trying to expand even this broad mandate. Examples are what they're doing with the Clean Air Act and what they're doing with what they call guidance documents. The only serious effort I know of in Congress, when last put to a vote in the Senate, had only 50-50 support to do something about this. I think there needs to be a change that would require that EPA can only use funds to enforce those regulations receiving a specific line item of appropriation if the economic impact exceeds a certain level. I'm sure that other people can think up even better ways, but I think this might be a way to proceed. Furthermore, I think we should require by statute that EPA regs demonstrate a market failure and be based on applying the scientific method and that these be reviewable. Next, there is a broad move to make various energy efficiency schemes mandatory and extremely strict. My view is that it is not the government's role, but it should be the role of the individual citizens as to what degree of energy efficiency they would like to buy. If we continue down what appears to be the current road, what I think will happen is that a number of manufacturers, such as I think automobile manufacturers, will end up with models that few will buy either in the U.S. or anywhere else. And the result will be the loss of jobs and somewhat frustrated consumers. Even more of our manufacturing base will move overseas, where these standards are not likely to exist. Next, I think we should stop trying to prevent access to our abundant energy resources on U.S. government land. It happens that, by accident, I think, private enterprise has found an almost unlimited, widely distributed source of natural gas. U.S. prices have dropped so much that it might even manage to compete with coal, but prices will probably rise. U.S. was already has more coal than anybody else in the world, so there is no shortage of energy resources now or in the immediate future. However, green ideology emphasizing scarcity, saving energy, clearly not in accord with reality or what those who wish to buy things might want. But still, the Obama administration and the environmental groups attempt to deny access and use through legal harassment and resource use restrictions on many energy resources, particularly on public land. Of course, reasonable environmental safeguards should be observed. The one exception to abundant energy resources in the United States is that of oil. Wind and solar are hopelessly expensive and unreliable. Oil imports are a major problem, but there's a pretty obvious solution, which is to transform either our natural gas, newly discovered, or our huge supplies of coal into oil. This is not some far-out scheme. It's well known how to do it. Need to open more energy resources owned by the U.S. government where markets will use them, et cetera. There's been a problem which we've noted earlier today, that U.S. government research and assessment is not always too even-handed. I think the one way that might change that is to require that both sides be both funded and assessed, rather than only one. One major benefit of this is that all the rent-seeking academics who are still in the other camp may well decide that they don't have to stay in the other camp and can move. This, I think, could actually be an important turning point if it could ever be achieved. Finally, I think it's an outrage that taxpayers are being funded to pay for their own indoctrination, but that's what's happening. And these are my conclusions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. If you could bring up mine. I'll move quickly so you can get to the man you've all been waiting for.